Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Ask the Elder. My name is Kia Scipio, and I am the proud alumna of Spelman College, class of 1998. And today I have the great fortune of sitting and talking with a fellow Spelman alumna, Kiva Wright Berry, who currently serves, let me rewind and say she's the proud member of the class of 1979 and currently serves as the president of the National Alumni Association of Spelman College. So I feel honored to have this moment of time with you, Kiva. I'll just give a little bit of your background and then
Okay.
we can dive into our conversation. Kiva is the senior financial business partner for academic affairs at the University of Southern Maine, USM, in Portland, Maine. In this role, she provides strategic direction for the allocation and administration of resources within the Division of Academic Affairs in the context of overall priorities of the university. Prior to working at USM, Kiva worked as a recruiter manager's assistant through her with American Express Financial Advisors and also worked with small businesses through her affiliation with the Small Business Development Center at Morehead State University in Morehead, Kentucky. Keisha is a member and or officer in various organizations, including the National Association of African American Studies and Affiliates, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and the National Alumni Association of Spelman College. She holds a BA in music performance and a master's of education in management from Cambridge College in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And Kiva, you're originally from Massachusetts,
I'm
correct?
from Boston, yes.
Boston. All right. Um, so since we both clearly have this love of Spelman, and in case others did not recognize through my uh, emphasis in your membership in Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, we both share the love of sorority and sisterhood.
Mhm.
I know Spelman College for me was a no-brainer. I had gone to a college fair when I was a sophomore in high school. And the women that represented Spelman College at that table were just, I soaked in every
Mhm.
single word that they said. They were just so magnetic and dynamic. And I was like, okay, I want to go wherever they are. And it also helped that at the time, A Different World was on. And that was
Oh,
when,
okay.
they filmed the outside of Giles Hall and
Hmm.
Abbey and the Oval and all of that and Sisters Chapel. And I was like, yeah, I'm going there. And so I remember visiting my junior year in high school. And ironically, it was during Freaknik weekend, back when they had
Ew.
Freaknik. And my dad was like, my child is not coming
Not
here. Not a chance.
good.
Then when we got to Spelman and sort of that tight security situation, like you could not get on campus unless you
Right.
absolutely had a reason. You had to be on a list of some sort, particularly that weekend. And I think my father, along with all the fathers that weekend, were like, okay, well, if you're gonna be down here and this
Mhm.
is happening, Spelman is the place to be because you cannot get on campus. And they
Right.
probably didn't want us to leave either, but that's a whole other conversation. Um, and so when it came time to apply to colleges, the only college that I applied to was Spelman. And my
Wow.
parents were like, Kia, you have to apply someplace else. And I was like, no, I have to go to Spelman.
Oh,
And if I don't go to
wow.
Spelman, I'm from Annapolis, Maryland. And I was like, if I
Okay.
don't go to Spelman, I'm just going to the Naval Academy. That would have never worked. Um, for a number of reasons.
Mhm.
But I applied early decision, and I will never forget December 23rd,
Wow.
1993. I got that letter in the mail, and I was so excited. So I got that thick package, so I knew it was
Okay.
good. So that was my draw. I knew I always wanted to go to an HBCU. And
Mhm.
Spelman, I mean, my parents are Howard grads.
Okay.
I didn't want to go to Howard because they were both I was in Annapolis and DC is just a 40-minute drive.
Right.
Like, no, that's too close. But Spelman just always, I think I was just true blue from the very beginning.
Wow.
So what was your draw to Spelman?
Different from yours, but and of late I've been sharing this story, and I guess a lot of people didn't know that I had. This is how I got there, but I had wanted to go to a black college. I knew that my parents are from Virginia, and they always talked about how much they revered their high school teachers, and they knew them, and they did have some college, but they knew them. And they thought, this is, for some reason, that seemed like a great way to know your teachers. And at that time, Boston was extremely white.
Mm-hmm.
My high school, we started out with 16 Black girls, and then we ended up, I think, with maybe 11 of us graduating.
Wow.
So out of a class of 150 or so. So and that was just, that was just what Boston was. It's a great educational area, but I didn't want to stay there. I'd been there all my life. I didn't want to stay there, so I wanted to go to a Black college. And initially, the only Black college I really knew of was Fisk, because I
Okay.
had seen the Fisk Jubilee Singers came to my church and performed, and I thought, and I was already taking music. I was going to be in music, so well, I'll be a Fisk Jubilee singer. That'll be great. I'll go to Fisk. I'll major in music. I'll be a Jubilee singer. Wonderful. And that was all great. And Fisk was fine. I applied to Fisk. I was accepted to Fisk. I applied to other places too, simply because we were just told you should. And
Right.
I got into Fisk, and everyone who knew me knew I was going to Fisk. But early on, or after my acceptance, and after my parents had sent in my deposit, my
Uh-oh.
brother was talking to him. He's like, "You can go to Fisk." He's older. He said, "That's in Nashville. That's the country and western capital of the world." And we were both into music, into soul music. And it's like, you want to go there. And then I had a Black teacher in my high school, which was rare. And she had heard of Spelman. And she thought, you ought to think about going to Spelman. But I didn't, because I went to an all girls high school, middle and high school.
Mhm.
So everything that came in the mail that said so and so's college for women, I didn't open it. I
No,
just
thank you.
tossed them. I had been around girls all this time. I'm not going to a women's college. And so I never did consider it. But then after some conversations, people started saying Spelman was really good. And Spelman was just starting to bloom. This is the mid 70s.
Mhm.
So it didn't have the big recognition it has now. But I sort of overnight decided that I didn't want to go to Fisk anymore, even though they had my deposit, that I wanted to go to Spelman. And I told my parents, I said, I think I want to go to Spelman. And my my mother said to me, well, if that's where you want to go, you're the one who has to do those 4 years. So
Mhm.
apply there and go there. And I was fortunate that I got in. In today's society, I wouldn't have gotten in because it was very, very late. I don't know if it was I don't know if the application deadline had passed, but it was very, very close.
Mhm.
And I was a product of Upward Bound, and my counselors there helped me get in because they called the college and sent them my transcript and told them what a good student I was and all of this. And they got it and they got me in. So it was just it was I was destined, I think, to be there,
Yep.
because I think how different my life would be. I
Mhm.
mean, obviously, I wouldn't be president of NASC because I wouldn't have gone to Spelman.
Right.
So it's always been interesting that for someone who wasn't going there and now to be at this level in the association, obviously, I think I was meant to go there. But it was, and once I got there, I've never looked back.
Ever.
Never looked back. My daughter's a Spelman grad, and I've just never looked back. Everyone who knows me knows what college I went to.
Mhm. Mhm. Absolutely. I
Um,
think there's something about Spelman that, I just that is it's an experience unlike anything else. And
sure.
I think, even being in a sorority, there's something about that Spelman experience that just, and I guess because we cross all sort of, demographics, right? And so it just, that sisterhood is real, and the friendships that you make truly do last a lifetime,
And the
truly.
one thing that was always unusual, actually did a thesis on HBCUs, and people talk about, oh, well, they're not diverse enough. But
Hmm.
diversity can be represented in so many ways. I mean, when I got to Spelman, I'm a Northern girl. So going to the South, first of all, people in the North were scared I was going to the South because that's how we think of the North.
Right.
But I'm going to the South, so I met girls from places I didn't know. I mean, people from Mississippi and Alabama, like, wow.
Yeah.
And I mean, they were like me, but they were different.
Yep. Yep.
And so you get a different type of diversity, and it does bolster you so that, I may not have gone this, but because I already been to school with white, so I knew what that was about.
Right.
But it bolsters you, and that type of the confidence that is instilled in you as an HBCU grad can carry you so far
Hmm.
that the fact that it is all quasi homogenous is irrelevant.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, I think I was fortunate to have been at Spelman during a pretty impressionable era with Dr. Janetta Cole was the
Mhm.
president of Spelman until my junior year, and we kept our class begged her to stay one more year, just graduate our class.
Right.
Um, but I also was there when Stacey Abrams was the president
Right.
of the Student Government Association. And I
Right.
remember I was very active in SGA when I was in high school and wanted to do the same when I got to Spelman. And I remember after a convocation, stopping Stacey because I wanted to talk to her about, how do I get involved, and SGA at Spelman College was different from SGA at high school. So, it was like I need to talk to some people to get an understanding of how this
Mhm.
worked. So, Stacey has obviously always been involved in politics, and Georgia sort of has been in the news, or been a relevant fixture in presidential politics,
Right.
having Jimmy Carter being formerly governor of Georgia and then becoming president of the country. Um, and then to see Georgia sort of back in the spotlight again and really being one of the key decision states for the Biden Harris um, win. And to see Stacey so involved in all of that, was just sort of like, wow, here she is again,
Mhm.
and so I know for myself and our classmates and friends who were close with her during her matriculation through Spelman. It's, I mean, the night of the election, and particularly once it was sort of, Georgia, what are you doing, my
Mhm.
social media feed was all about Stacey, all about
Yes.
Spelman. It was unreal. um
Yes.
so when did you sort of know about Stacey Abrams?
So I've known Stacy not well, but I've known her for a long time. So back in I think 2001,
Mhm.
Stacy was the attorney for NASC.
Ah, okay.
And I was on the board then and worked with her. I think I was over Constitution and bylaws. And she worked with us then. And at that time she was working at a nonprofit, I think a nonprofit law firm. And so she was still relatively young out of college. And so she was bringing us ideas of things that we could do from her nonprofit experience, because nonprofit law is very different from for profit law. So she had a very good sense of what organizations should do from an organizational standpoint. And I was working with her because we were making some changes to our governing documents, and she was helping with that. But I remember being impressed with her then, like, wow, and telling people we need to listen to what she's saying, because she's not just plucking this out of the air. This is based on knowledge and experience.
Mhm.
And some folks did, some folks didn't. But I had when she was announced she was running for governor, I'm like, yeah, of course Stacey's running for
Mhm.
governor. Yes, of
Mhm.
course she is. But I've told people who've asked about that, the person that you see, that's really who she is.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's so refreshing to know she's not putting on airs and saying things just to be heard. This is who she is. This is what she believes, and how she seems to model her life. So it's beyond exciting to have her in this role, and possibly even, if she runs for governor again, possibly having her as governor. I mean, you
Yeah,
won't be able to tell Spelmanites anything then.
you can't. Well, you can't tell us much now as it is. So,
I know, I know.
so you mentioned, recognizing when Stacey ran for governor, and it sounds like you sort of followed her trajectory over time. What were your thoughts when she did not win her bid for governor, and especially given, was somebody who did not concede because of the issues with voter irregularities.
Yes, but that's documented. So it's different than we have today, someone not conceding based on nothing. And when she didn't concede, it was clear that the current governor, who was also Secretary of State counting the votes, I'm thinking, what world does that happen in?
Exactly.
You can't hold, the cat and the canary. You can't do it all together. And so it was disappointing that she lost, of course, but I thought the way that she handled it was
Hmm.
extreme and was supreme. I
Hmm.
mean, she didn't concede because she knew there was something else going on, and it was clear. It wasn't as though she'd been saying it all along. It was rigged and all this sort of stuff. You could document what had happened to people in the state to know that the votes either weren't counted properly or they were suppressed.
Yeah.
And so I think that her not winning, while disappointing, she did show people that that's not the end.
Right.
She didn't lose and then go away. She
Right.
said almost at the same moment that I want to do something to help rectify the
Right.
situation.
Right. Well, and she did. In light of, we recognize that voter suppression, particularly people of color and young people, is rampant.
Mhm.
And it was particularly apparent, and everybody saw in the 2018 Georgia elections. And so with that, she launched Fair Fight Action, which was a organization that would combat voter suppression in Georgia and nationally. So, did you know that Stacey was launching such an aggressive effort in Georgia, and that she had, was really sort of taking, which I think, is one of these examples of, you take lemons and you make lemonade. She was like,
Exactly.
look, it didn't work for me, but I know why, and I'm going to do something to fix it so it doesn't
Exactly.
happen again.
No, I didn't know that she was launching that, but it seems it seemed appropriate that if you understand what the issue was, and that there was voter suppression, and except for that you could possibly be governor, then of course, if your goal is to serve the people and not just serve yourself, then of course you want to do something to give the deserved rights to people so that they can vote fairly and freely. And as I've heard people say, that if had she won,
Mhm.
Biden might not be president elect.
This is true because she was such an influential and instrumental part of the Biden Harris victory in turning Georgia blue, which I've been saying Spelman blue.
Right,
Um,
me too.
so, did you know that she was this involved? And, I know certainly within the last, several months, we've heard a lot about Stacey Abrams and the conversations had with her on the various news channels and political pundits, et cetera. But had you sort of been following her along, particularly as a Spelman alumnus, seeing what she was up to and how she was involved? Did you know anything about that?
Not totally. I mean, as I said, I knew she was doing the fair fight, and we would hear stories about her from time to time. In fact, she came to, I guess it was homecoming last year,
Yeah.
and stopped by our NASC booth and picked up her life membership card, and then also was talking to people all along the way about the Fair Fight campaign and what she was doing. So I hadn't lost track of her at all because I knew she was working behind the scenes, and so it's not surprising that she got this far, and it's continuing because she's not finished yet, continuing to do some things.
Yeah, no, we have certainly not seen the last of Stacey
Not at
Abrams,
all.
and I know that a lot of people have talked about, will she be part of the Biden Harris cabinet, and or is she's going to get some kind of an appointment
Right.
or whatever. And the last I heard her say was that she has other work to do, and she is happy in the work that she is doing, and in recognizing that people are able to exercise their rights to vote. So we certainly want her to keep doing that work as we get to the special election or the special election in Georgia in January. We
Right.
definitely want to make sure she's able to do what she does, and clearly does very, very well.
I think
Um,
she'll have a decision to make that should she be asked to serve in the Biden Harris administration, that's a hard thing to turn down. But also, she's also considering still being governor of Georgia. She'll have to be able to weigh which one needs to take precedent over the other.
right,
And it's impossible to say what she might do.
right,
But I think she's going to have to make those kinds of decisions because when you have to grab it while everyone is interested in you, especially in politics, her name is on the tip of everyone's tongue for something. And
right.
so that and also I don't think that um, Biden Harris would want people to think that they're slighting her in any way,
Right,
knowing
right.
knowing how important she's been, not just to Georgia, because that was important in Georgia, but that energy spread across the country in terms of getting more people registered and having them vote.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting when you said the timing because I remember even when Barack Obama was, a junior senator, and the thought was, well, he's only been in Congress for 2 years, and
Mhm.
how can he run, and what kind of experience does he have? And then look what happened, right?
Right,
It's like when it's your time, regardless of what that might look like to the outside. The universe always shows you where you should be when you should be
exactly.
there.
Yes.
Um, so, it's been said, particularly over the last several weeks, but we certainly saw this in the midterm elections, that Black women tend to be the ones that turn the tide for things. And in
Mhm.
this case, it's said that a Black woman from Spelman helped get out the vote in a city run by a Black woman from FAMU to push a ticket with a Black woman from Howard over the top.
Right.
Um, so, what impact do you think the visibility of Stacey Abrams will have, along with Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms and Vice President Kamala elect, will have on the dreams and futures of young people, particularly young girls of color?
I really hope that it lets young girls see what they can be. I mean, when Barack Obama was elected, it allowed young boys to really understand that you can grow up to be president. I mean, as a child, that's what I was told and my classmates, but I never really believed it because I didn't see anybody who looks like me as president in all the history books and the current president. So it's not something that I can necessarily believe. But when Obama was elected, I think young boys could say, wow, you really can do this. And now young girls will really be able to say the same, even though Harris is just is vice president. That's irrelevant. It's a high office. It's one of the highest offices. So I think young girls should be able to see that it really is possible. I really can do anything because she looks like me, and why not?
Why not?
Why not?
I mean, I'm not by any means a fortune teller, but I can't imagine that Kamala Harris will stop at just vice
Oh,
president.
no.
So,
No, she already wanted to be president, so I'm sure
absolutely.
she'll run, definitely.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think two things that sort of come to mind as when we're talking about the impact and influence of this on young girls, and I have the picture in my hall that is may her first steps be towards Spelman, and it's a little girl in her little sailor dress
Right?
walking to Sister's Chapel.
Correct, yeah.
And so that I see, it's like it's you start with your greatness at Spelman, and then and then I see the image of Kamala Harris, and the little girl in the mirror, and then there's the
Right.
other Kamala Harris and one of the Little Rock.
The Ruby
uh,
Bridges.
Yes, with Ruby
Mhm.
Bridges. Thank you. I don't know why I had a blank with that.
Mhm.
But it's just, you see those images have such a powerful presence, um,
Mhm.
and so impactful at this point. And little girls, like, maybe don't realize just what that means right now, but I know for us looking at them, it's like there's so much promise and there's so much that you can do. And representation matters. I think that's the
Yes.
big thing. Representation matters, and the more we see people who look like us, doing, really big things, um, that really impacts, the how people see themselves, and see their potentialities. And I think that's so important. And the other image that always sticks in my head is when Barack Obama's in the Oval Office with the little boy that's rubbing his head.
Yes,
It's like,
yes.
you have hair like mine,
Right.
you
That's
know.
right. Yeah.
And again, that's, who knows what kind of influence that moment had for that little boy. I mean, obviously we were like, oh my goodness, but like what that did for him to be
Sure.
able to say, I was in the Oval Office with the President of the United States. Maybe one day I will be in the Oval Office
That's
as the
right.
President of the United States.
Because you know it's possible now.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. So, since we're talking about Stacey, Mayor Lance Bottoms, and now our Vice President elect, Harris, um, they're all HBCU grads. What impact do you expect this to have on the reputation of and the desire for students to attend HBCUs?
Well, I hope it's going to be very positive. I think that it should raise the profile dramatically of HBCUs, and people will know what the acronym stands for. You won't have to spell it out every time. They'll understand when we say I went to an HBCU, and that's very important because it not only raised the profile nationwide for just the general population, but it also needs to raise the profile within our own communities. As I mentioned, I did research during my master's on HBCUs, and found that at that time, this has been a while now, but found at that time that for some parents, they didn't want their children to go to HBCUs because they felt they were inferior. Every school is not at the top, but every non-HBCU is not at the top too.
Absolutely.
So it's the same situation. But when you read about not only the history but what the offerings that schools have, there some of these institutions are tremendous. I mean, we know Spelman has ranked as the number one HBCU for the past 13 years, and Howard is right up there with us. But there are other schools around the country that also should have their profile raised, because people will say, "Oh, that's the kind of school that Kamala Harris went to. Tell me more." And maybe we can get some more funding. I mean, I think the Biden-Harris team has already promised some more funding to historically Black colleges. So that's very important, because sometimes what they don't have is adequate funding. They've got good faculty, they've got a student body, but sometimes we lack in the resources, and yet our students can still succeed. So just imagine what we could do if we had resources coupled with what's already going on. So if you can succeed at some place that doesn't have all of the top-notch equipment in the sciences, and now you get funding to do that, that certainly is going to benefit your students. And we need those students. And when you look at data, you find that some of the top African Americans in fields have gone to an HBCU.
Mm-hmm. That's
So
true.
this should be a good time for us.
I sure hope so. So, with along that line, um, what are your thoughts on, sort of the impact of, the visibility now, and how that may impact, and influence alumni giving? Because that's one thing that, so many of us, we say we're proud HBCU grads, but then our giving back is not always as it should be. Our schools don't have endowments like, some of the other majority colleges,
Right,
or and and that's what they run on, the endowment. They're not running on sort of the tuition dollars.
right,
So,
right. Yeah.
do you have thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think HBCU grads have really got to think about where they are in life and how important their education at their particular institution has been, and then turn that into contributions.
Mhm.
We can't have bake sales and sweat and sock drives and all those sort of things and expect we're going to educate students when the cost of education across the nation is rising. I mean, it's not even though it's less expensive to go to an HBCU as compared with some of the majority institutions, it's still a lot of money when the population that you're serving um, normally has an income that's lower than the rest of the country. So when you do that, so we either need to get to give more money as alums so that we can provide more scholarships for our students so they can go and complete their education. And
Mhm.
so I'd like to think that as part of if Kamala Harris is going to be sort of the ambassador for HBCUs, that she does help to get that message out there that, yeah, I'm a proud alum, and you've got to be proud of your school too, and turn around and give back to it.
Mhm. Absolutely, absolutely. Um, our joke has been that homecoming 2021 at Howard is going to be ridiculous.
Yeah, especially
Well,
if they get wind that she's going to show up.
right, right. Well, I also saw a funny meme that said Howard homecoming January 20th, 2021. And I
Oh
was like,
yeah,
okay, there y'all starting already.
yes,
Uh,
that's true.
so, as we're talking about schools, we're in this very sort of historic and unprecedented moment. And I know we didn't necessarily talk about this, but I would love your thoughts as an alumna, because I know I certainly have my opinion about this, but how schools are handling the COVID crisis, the COVID pandemic, and, sort of the having to just reconfigure all of the things that we thought about, sort of that in-person experience and on-campus learning. Um, and I would just be interested to know, sort of your thoughts about how that impacts the Spelman sisterhood experience.
Well, it's been very interesting for Spelman. I think they've done an excellent job of pivoting from in person to online. And so that went well from the end of last semester through the summer. Starting in the fall, of course, the big concern was how were our first year students going to get that Spelman experience? They didn't have the on campus freshman week, or they don't call it that anymore. New student orientation, they didn't have that. And they tried to do some things online because I was involved in several of those, but obviously it's not the same.
Yeah.
And so I think that's been very difficult for them. The college actually did a survey and found that all of our students from first years to seniors are struggling, feeling disconnected because they don't have that opportunity to see one another. And if you're a first year student, you don't even know, you may not even know what the campus looks like because
Yeah.
you've not been there. So we've got to find some ways to help them through this. I think many of them can get through it from an academic perspective, but as we know, with many HBCUs and Spelman in particular, it's a lot more than the academics. There are all the traditions that we have that we can't celebrate with them, and that is what connects us. I mean, you and I can talk about things, 10 years apart, and we can 20 years apart. We can talk about things that we probably both experienced because it's part of the Spelman experience. So I feel very sad for our students who can't do that. The class of 2020 who didn't get to go through all of the things that happened over graduation weekend. All of that stuff, it's minor when you isolate them, but when you realize how they fold into the entire picture, then you can say that they did miss quite a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember senior week um, last year, and just thinking about all the, sort of, I remember all of the different activities that we had leading up to graduation.
Right.
I think about senior day, and I was fortunate. My sister was a freshman when I was a senior at Spelman.
Oh. Hmm.
And so, you know, being able to walk through the arch for the first
Right.
time, and having my sister there, because, they all the freshmen line up and, greet you as you, and I just remember just how beautiful that moment was. And
Sure.
and I just remember there was one night during senior week in particular where we had the senior soiree, and just taking a moment to sit back and think about, like, just how much I and my friends and classmates and sisters had grown in that 4 years
Exactly.
we were
Yes.
together. And then also feeling that confidence, and that, on some level feeling a bit invincible, like we can do anything.
Hmm.
um and having that moment with those women was something that was just such a cherished memory. And I
Yeah.
just remember thinking on graduation day that I was so sad for them that they couldn't have that moment.
Yes. Yeah.
But I think that I will say, I know it's hard, and I by no means want to dismiss that, but I think that, the women at Spelman today are so savvy and so flexible, um, that despite the challenges, they're making the most of it. I mean, they have the Peloton app now, so they can all work
Oh.
out together. I was like, oh, well, I'm probably talking to the right person. Can the Women Association work out something so we can get it on the
I don't know.
Peloton,
That is something we ought to consider. Like, don't worry about them. We all need it too.
right? We're exercising with you.
Right.
That could be a great way to bond current students with alumni of the school, so we can all sort of interact with each other. Just a thought, just a thought.
That's something to think about. Yeah, but you're right about how I think these young women are quite resilient, and they will get through. I told them in some clips that I had to give at the end of the year that that they're not going to let this year, this COVID-19, define them.
No.
They'll be able to surpass that. It's just that I think when you spend 4 years there and you hear about all of these activities and these events, or you see them. So I was a member of the Glee Club, and we were at every event. So I knew what was coming.
Yeah.
And so I was ready to participate in that. And it's probably the same for many of those young women. They knew what was coming and they didn't get to do it. So that's really, really, really too sad, too bad for them, too sad for them. And even if there's a way to do it next year, which we toyed with, it won't be the same. It
Mhm.
won't be the same. But I think what they'll have among themselves is a different type of bond
Yes,
because they've spent this time, because they missed their senior year was truncated. They
yeah,
didn't get a chance to say goodbye to their friends,
yeah,
which is an important part because these are people that you are going to run into the rest of your life.
yeah, yeah. Run into, stay together with. You're
I
in each
know.
other's weddings,
I know,
godparents,
right?
children. I mean, like I said in the very beginning, the Spelman sisterhood is real, and I think that is the other piece that will resound through all of the crazy that has been, is that that sisterhood is very, very real.
But just think how proud the current students must be to see Stacy
Oh, of
on,
course.
on the national point. They don't know her. They
Yeah,
haven't seen her in person, but it's like she went to the school that I'm going to,
yeah,
even though I'm not there physically. That's the same person. And that too can help bolster them because they're saying, wow, look what she's done.
right.
She was one person could make a difference. And they'll be able to see that and hold that up to people, in years to come, saying that that's the school that I went to.
Yeah. Well, this makes me go back to something that you said earlier, Kiva, and you were saying, sort of how you applied to Spelman at the very, last minute, made that change after your deposit had been made to Fisk. And now here you are as the president of the National Alumni Association. Um, Tell me, what was your driving motivation for being so involved in the Alumni Association? Because that is one thing,
Hmm.
I know I attend events and programs and things, and and I think that we all get the emails about what's happening locally, um, but sometimes, in terms of making that, like, yes, I'm officially a member, like, what motivated you?
I really think it was the sisterhood. I don't have a sister. Always wanted sisters. And when I returned, not when I finished college, but when I finally came back to Boston, and there had been a chapter there, but it wasn't active. I knew there were alumni in the area. And I thought, well, we should get our chapter back going because that's a way for us to connect.
Mhm.
And it's difficult in Boston because many people are there for professional school, so it's hard to carve out some time. But I wanted to have the opportunity to meet other people. I want to hear their stories. I
Mhm.
was always been very interested in how did you get to stuff? What did you do? Or why are you here? And you're from where? And who do you know? And maybe we know some of the same people. And that was a way for me to do it.
Yeah.
And it just connected with me. Someone asked me after I'd helped to revitalize that chapter, was I interested in doing something as a regional coordinator? I was like, well, I don't know. What do you have to do? You know,
Mhm.
it wasn't something I'd done, but it's another level of the association. Okay, yeah, let's do that. And I just haven't stopped.
Haven't stopped. Well, now you're at the top, and
Yeah.
um, so I think you're absolutely right. I mean that connection is real, and I know anytime, particularly when you're first out of college and you're maybe go to a new place, whether it's for graduate school or
Mhm.
working or whatever, and to have that network, that built-in network
Yep.
of Spelman alumna is just a beautiful thing. As a Spelman alumna, it's a beautiful thing, that you can always count on that. Um, what is, I guess, what I would ask you, what is your fondest Spelman memory? And I'm sure you have lots of them,
Mm.
but what is something that, when you're talking to a prospective student, that you're like, let me tell you about this particular situation?
Well, I imagine it must be connected to the Glee Club. I was a music major. I was in the Glee Club. I toured for 4 years, and I had the best time most of the time, except for when we had to travel across the country. I had an unfriendly name for that trip, but otherwise, it was a wonderful time. I mean, the being in the Glee Club was special, and I really recognized this after graduating because we had to go to almost every public event because they always had music, and so we went to events that I might not have gone to otherwise as a student. Like, "Oh, I want to hear so and so speak," but I did go, and we had to be there and be present. So I heard from so many different people from across the country that I probably wouldn't have heard them speak. And I can now reflect and say, oh yeah, I heard Gwendolyn Brooks read her poetry in Sister's Chapel. Yeah, of course we read that. Oh yeah, I saw Wilma Rudolph come in and do her thing. I wouldn't have necessarily have gone to these events, but I had to be there. So they all most of my fond events revolve around the Glee Club or around something maybe happening in the dorm as a freshman, because freshman year was a great time for us, and we were it's when I got to know people because of the curfew. We had a curfew then. We
Yeah,
really got to know people in our building, and I'm still friends with so many of them today.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
What's your event? What's your favorite memory?
Well, I have two. The one I told you, my when my sister senior
Mhm.
day, and seeing my sister in her white dress, and we finally get to wear our graduation regalia. That was a
Yeah,
moment, that I have that picture. It's in my family room. I
that's
love
wonderful.
that moment. And the other was, speaking of being in the dorm, um, we reenacted scenes from Under the Sea from The Little Mermaid in our dorm room. And it was one of the funniest afternoons ever. It was this rainy, yucky Saturday,
Mm,
and I think we were just like, one thing I did not know is that it does rain a lot in Georgia.
mhm.
And so it was one of those, like, we had just had like consecutive days of rain, and we were just, and I think we were just stir crazy at that point, but it was freshman year, like you said, freshman year.
Yeah,
We reenacted scenes from The Little Mermaid, and we were singing Disney songs, and that is just like one of the fondest memories that I have. And it's something funny because all of those women and I are still very good
of
friends.
course.
Every once in a while, like something, and they have children, and like something will pop up, and we're like, do you want us to do our version of that
Oh
song?
no.
So yeah, so those are really good memories. And of course,
Yeah.
um, over the course of 4 years, you just meet so many great people. And I think the other thing that, and I think is something for the women who aren't able to be together, can sort of hold on to, is there were women that I knew them in college, but I've become friends with them since college. You know,
Yes.
whether it's because now we're all in the same area or whatever the situation may be. But and we sort of, and we laugh. We were just at a socially distant bridal sprinkle. We call it a sprinkle because we couldn't all
Mm,
get together. So it's a
mhm.
um, and we, talked about how this group of us, we all knew each other and we were always friendly. But in terms
Right.
of like hanging out all the time, we didn't do that. Whereas now we're much more connected than we were in college. And
And
so that's
and
something.
and that's another benefit I tell people of the association. I've often called our meetings little mini reunions because
Yeah.
not only do you get to see people you knew in college who were in your class, you see people along the continuum, maybe much older, or maybe much younger, or someone who might have been a year or two behind you, and you get to connect with them differently because now your careers have evolved
Mhm.
and you may have some things to some wisdom to impart on each other. Or you listen to some of our older sisters and hear what their lives were like and how impactful Spelman was for them and how they negotiated the college years at that time. You think, wow, how could you have done that? I mean, you didn't have a phone. I understand. How could you have worked out all that stuff?
Yes.
So it's very. I mean, one of my favorite stories from an older alumna was her telling me about the laundry that was impacted, and I stayed impacted, and
Okay.
that you had to pass an ironing test, a laundry test. You had to wash your clothes, you had to iron them. And I remember thinking, I'd still be at Spelman because
I was
I don't iron very well.
frustrated.
I'd still be there trying to iron something, but they had to show how they could do these things. And you think, well, that seems like a strange thing, but being having crisp clothing, and that was the times, and they went through that and they moved through it. And you have the alums who were part of the civil rights movement and what they did. So I like to have younger alumni get involved with a chapter and see some of our golden girls, our older members. Listen to what their lives were like when you had one of those down days. Listen to what they did and how they've survived.
Mhm. Yeah, no, that's so true, so true. And I love talking to our older
Mhm.
alumni. They're just so the stories they tell, and um, I remember going to a Founders Day event, and one of the recent grads was there, and she was talking about how it was too hot to be wearing pantyhose during graduation.
Mm.
Oh, the older women were not having any parts of that. They were like, that is part of the Spelman ceremonial attire.
Yes.
And I was like, so I won't tell them about how I had not only no stockings on, but I had strappy sandals. They were
Oh
not,
no, no, no,
that was not a thing. So,
no, no.
but it's the sisterhood is real. It's
It is.
beautiful. Even to this day, when I hear the Spelman hymn, um, you know, I love to host events at my home, and usually my Spelman sisters come, and
Mhm.
we always, before anybody leaves, like when the first Spelman sister is about to leave, we always sing the Spelman hymn, and
Oh.
everybody's doing. We're like, oh, you don't understand. Now everybody
Mhm.
just sort of gets it, but
You're right.
it's our thing. It means something, and that's what bonds us. So,
Yeah.
well, this has really been fantastic. I've really, I like I said, I'm honored to be able to have this conversation with you, Kiva. And if there is sort of one thing, particularly in the midst of the crazy that has been 2020, that has sustained you and that you would impart on someone else to sort of help them get through the remainder of this crazy year,
Hmm.
what would that be?
I don't know if I have those kinds of words, but I was talking today with someone about the stresses that people are having and things that they're trying to do and mistakes they may be making. I said, so now is the time where we really have to offer up a lot of grace to people. It's difficult. It's very difficult. Many of us will put on a face that we're doing fine, but it's very difficult to try to negotiate this to if you've got family around to juggle schoolwork for your young children and maybe schoolwork for your older children and to juggle those things and get them taken care of. Or if you have family that you want to take care of and they're not in the same city as you and you can't go take care of them, you can't see them. I mean, getting on Zoom with some of our elders is a little difficult, but you want to see them. So and that makes it difficult. And so when you have things that you're trying to do so many things and juggle so many things, and you've made errors or you've missed something, ask people to give you a little grace, saying today just didn't work, but tomorrow will be better. I mean, I pray that tomorrow will be better. It's not been a good year. It's been a very difficult year in so many ways, and hopefully we will all come through this having learned something. I keep trying to understand what is the lesson I'm supposed to be learning, because it's not coming through. So I know it's coming, but it's to find out what is that lesson I'm supposed to be learning this year.
Yeah, no, that is so true. I mean, I've sort of, my going into 2020, I was sort of hashtag silver lining was my sort of call sign or whatever. And I keep trying to find it. I keep trying to find the silver lining in all that we're experiencing.
Mhm.
And, sometimes it's little things like I traveled a lot for work and, I was like, I just need some time to just breathe and just be.
Mhm.
And the universe, it's almost like they're like, you just want time to breathe and just be. Okay, well,
Right.
you're clipped. You can't go anywhere.
Right.
And so, some of this is the universe making us do the things that we've been saying we wanted to do, but just
Mhm.
hadn't made the time to. Um, but it's also made this very difficult. And the thing that I always talking about the Spellman hymn, the one thing that I think we can think about as we sort of continue to soldier through this year. And it's the second verse of the Spellman hymn. And through years of toil and pain, may thy dear walls remain beacons of heavenly light, undaunted by the fight. And when life's race is won, thy noble work is done. O God, forever bind our hearts to thine. And I look at that and I think right now, all the things that even to get to Spelman, to create Spelman College that women went through.
Mhm.
Um, and, the years, like they said, through years of toil and pain, and through all of the changes in our country and in history, um, nothing quite like COVID-19 and the
Right.
social reckoning that we've had over the last several months. But, Spellman's walls still remain. The sisterhood still remains. We're still here fighting the good fight. And I think that is what we sort of have to leave each day with, that we're here and we're still fighting the fight. It's hard, but we're making it happen.
And we are undaunted.
And we
We
are.
really are undaunted.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Well, I think that's a good way for us to end, don't you?
I do. Definitely. This has been good.
It's been really great. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it.
This message has been brought to you by the National Black Leadership and Empowerment Project.